Count it in. Eyes up record. Sunday night, silver flicker in the blue. Blink on, blink back, what did it do? Night vision up, heartbeat on the grid. I've lost tapes before, this one won't be hit. South sky blooms like an angel made of glass. Shapes in the dark, a spell they cast. Left brain, right brain, hold that frame. Pin the event, date, place, name. I am the observer, eyes on the unknown.
My name is Dale, and I want to welcome you to my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. I'm so grateful that you're here. If you haven't done it yet, let me go ahead and encourage you to subscribe to this channel and then go check it out because we've got some great interviews. Today, our guest is going to be Matt Laslo of Ask A Pol, and I've had Matt on several times and a lot of other great guests. So if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you share this podcast as well. It'll really help us out. In fact, I appreciate you being here once again. I'm going to bring Matt on in just a second. But before I do that, I'd like to read a little bit of an opening bio for him. If you've ever wondered what really happens in the halls of Congress when the cameras aren't running, today's guest is one of the few journalists actually capturing it in real time. Matt Laslo is the founder of Ask A Pol, a groundbreaking platform that flips traditional journalism on its head, putting raw, unfiltered questions directly to lawmakers in the corridors of power. No script, no spin, just answers, sometimes uncomfortable ones. From UAP transparency to AI, from political dysfunction to the candid off-the-record moments politicians never expected to go public. Laslo has built a reputation as both trusted and feared inside Washington. Today, we're going behind the headlines to explore what he's really seeing, what lawmakers say when they think no one's listening, and whether the system is more broken or more controlled than we've been led to believe. Now, I want to go ahead and give you a teaser. I'm going to ask Matt a question about a comment that Representative Tim Burchett made to TMZ. The guys at TMZ asked him the question. They really wanted him to clarify something. He'd made the statement that if you saw what I saw, you would lose sleep at night. And so they brought that up to him and they said, were you talking about NHI? Were you talking about aliens basically? And are we in danger? Is that what you're talking about by not being able to sleep at night? And Tim Burchett gave him the answer. And we're going to talk about that answer. And we're going to also talk about, how the other representatives and senators in Congress and try to figure out what the overall view there is. But without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring the one and only, the professor himself. In fact, we're going to have to speed this one up a little bit. So I do apologize because we're going to probably be a little bit in overdrive right now because I have so many good questions and I've only got 1 hour for the professor here, because guess what he's doing next hour? He's going to be talking to a bunch of other professors in an academic setting. And so blessed to have you on, Matt. I want to welcome you.
I got dressed up for you.
Yeah, for me. Yeah. Okay. That would be the first time, right?
Things I do for you, brother.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. How are things going? You look like you're feeling pretty good right now.
I mean, springtime in Washington is beautiful, even with threats of nuclear Armageddon hanging over town.
Wow.
That does not ruin the beautiful spring blossoms we have here in town. So yeah, it's a good little time of year here.
Were relieved that 5 o'clock yesterday came and went, and so it wasn't like you said an all-out destroy all of the oil producing places, and it would have been a nightmare. And so I'm not political. I'll say that up front. But I was definitely concerned, if that deadline came and I'll just use the word, all hell broke loose. I know a lot of people were concerned about it. So I'm very, very relieved, and hopefully they'll work something out and that war will end and we can get back to, living our lives without having to worry about the world exploding.
We can get back to normal heart palpitations.
Yeah, we start worrying about other things.
Yep.
Okay, Matt, let me ask you this first question. When you ask members of Congress about UAPs off script, do you sense genuine ignorance, quiet awareness, or a deliberate deflection? And how can you tell the difference?
It's honestly with 90% of them in this Congress, and it might even be 95 or 98%, but you nailed it. It's genuine, just they do not have any understanding. And even what we saw since David Grusch dropped his bombshell back in 2023 is now on Capitol Hill. It's almost like UFO, UAP is a dirty word. So in last year's NDAA, instead of even let me take a step back. In last year's NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, lawmakers addressed the UAP issue, but in the act, it was UAS, unmanned aerial systems. Right. So they wouldn't even go and deal with the topic. But then when I talked to Senator Tim Kaine and others, they were like, oh, the problem we had with incursions over Langley Air Force Base with unknown objects, which are UAP, UFO, they were addressed through the UAS provisions. And so it's like, wait, the government changed the term from UFO to UAP as like a little head fake. And then now the government, members of Congress aren't even using that term and are hiding from that term. And so,
So Matt, why are they running away from the term? Why are they running away from the subject? Is it just because they're afraid of it, or they don't want the political fallout?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a lot of ignorance, and probably because of me, because I'm walking around with a microphone and I asked all 100 U.S. senators about the topic. And so that made them all a handful, a little cagey. But I mean, it also could be because, at least in the House, where you have the most attention to this issue, it is kind of the furthest right folks. Luna, Burchett, Burleson, like a lot of times they're even very out of alignment with their fellow Republicans, the other 200 or so members of the House. And so that could be part of it. Now we're going into an election year. I think that's a little part of it. But yeah, I mean, I'd say just overall, this entire Congress, I'd say the biggest, and I've been covering Congress for 20 years now, I'd say the biggest sin of this contemporary Congress is just a lack of inquisitiveness. And so like the start of this Congress, even though Democrats are basically opposed to anything President Trump does, they have such a lack of memory. And so like one of the first weeks of the second Trump administration, you had Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, get up there in the sacred White House podium and say, hey, remember the New Jersey drone incursions? Oh, FAA knew what all those were all along. And I'm like, that's weird, because in the last Congress, like people were freaking out. And so under Biden, Secretary Mayorkas, who I think Luna and others had pushed to impeach him, Secretary Mayorkas had a classified call with the New Jersey delegation. And so like Senators Cory Booker, Senator Sandy Kim are like, I don't have an update on the New Jersey drone incident, but they're like, we know that what Caroline Leavitt said does not mesh with what Mayorkas said. And I'm like, okay, so why doesn't the UAP caucus drag in Mayorkas? Because you guys already wanted to impeach him. And hey, now you might be able to put him in jail because either he lied to members of Congress on that classified call or he didn't. And if he didn't, that means the government still doesn't know what these are. And the government, from what I've heard, still has no idea what they are. but the Jersey delegation has basically moved on from it. And I'm like, it just kills me. That lack of memory, that lack of curiosity, that lack of drive. And like for Republicans on the UAP caucus, they're just like, oh, Trump and his people said it. Boom. It's truth written in stone with lightning. We can move on. And it's like, no. Come on. Mayorkas, who you hate. Yeah. He either lied or he didn't. And so, yeah, there's just a lack of.
I wanted to hit back on the, I had like 3 different questions that came up to me whenever you were talking about, you know, how they, you know, basically most of them seem to be running away from the UAP disclosure. But one of my first questions is going to have to do with the Democrat, I believe from Connecticut, and his name is Jim Himes. Now, I saw it on one of your Ask A Pols where you asked him a question about UAPs, and he kind of almost scoffed at you because you dared to use that word. And he said, I always get in trouble when I say this. He said, but, you know, if you could see what I see, and, you know, on the surface, it sounds like he's saying, if you see what I see, there's something to see, but that isn't how he meant it, was it?
No. He's saying, come on, look at the books. According to what I see, there's nothing there. And he's interesting because he was in there the year before Grusch, David Grusch, the UFO whistleblower. He testified publicly in 2023, that summer. The year before that, 2022, that's when Congress had its first UFO public hearing in 50 years. And so that was chaired by Andre Carson. And then Jim Himes is senior on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, or HPSCI. And so Himes is like, all right, I've been at the table. But it's interesting. Himes looks back at that, and you can watch it on C-SPAN. And he's like, I asked all the witnesses, and they said, no, they haven't seen alien bodies. Or you have to go back and check it exactly. But he's like that group AARO, which most people in the UAP UFO community like don't have any respect for AARO and just think AARO is like a PSYOP or whatever. Well, AARO, the all domain anomalous office, whatever.
Resolution office, yeah.
Resolution office, yeah, thank you. So AARO, most members of Congress are like, okay, AARO gives us these reports, and they're like giving themselves this glowing assessment because they're like, look, we've identified 500 of these 700 unknown objects. And Congress is like, well, no. Like, good job on identifying those objects. Those are no longer the unidentified ones. We want to talk about the other 200. And so when someone like Himes gets that report, he's like, look, they know what all 500 of these are. And so he kind of leans that way and just uses AARO as a crutch, some would say. And so it's interesting hearing.
We're going to talk about AARO, and that's in our list of questions. So maybe we better save those because there's a lot of interesting things even from your reporting that's going on about AARO. But let me ask this question: with all of the negative forces pushing back, because part of it feels like to me like the narrative that we're being fed in X and through other platforms is that there is a huge push for UAP disclosure in Congress. And from what I'm hearing from you is it's not the way it's being, that the majority of people are not behind it. It's a small minority and they are pushing, but they're pushing hard, but they're a small minority. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, but I mean, this is the interesting thing with Congress. And so Republicans are in control. I'm like, let's just look at the House. When it comes to something like Cuba policy, House Republicans tend, and like I used to be the correspondent for Miami Public Radio, where all those South Florida Cubans are. And so because you have these members like Mario Diaz-Balart, former Mayor Jimenez, because they're the loudest voices on Cuban policy, the whole party tends to just follow them. And back when Marco Rubio, when he was in the Senate, before he became Secretary of State, the whole Senate, all of the Republicans and most Democrats too, would just kind of defer to Rubio because he's the expert. So take cannabis policy, where Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris despises, he's a doctor and he just despises marijuana. So because he's the loudest voice, he's been able to lead House Republican Conference on marijuana policy, not because he's the most knowledgeable or anything, but because he's the loudest. And so that is where it's kind of both and when it comes to the UAP issue, because these members are very vocal, because they are very good with social media. And look at the Secrets Task Force chair, Congresswoman Luna. She was on Joe Rogan's show last year, was just on the Bill Maher show. And so Republican leaders see that and they're like, oh, and so that puts more attention on the issue than the actual body of Congress itself is giving to the issue.
Okay, well, that leads really into one of the other questions I wanted to ask is, what does Trump saying he wants to UAP UFO files released? To me, it sounds like, and I don't want to be political at all. I don't want this to be political at all. But you have to ask, well, was there pressure coming from within Congress to get him to do this? Or was this pressure from outside, the fact that he could see that there's so many people that are interested? And let me ask this other one. I didn't have it, but somebody suggested I ask it. In fact, my segment producer, and that is, remember Trump, what we're trying to figure out why he did what he did. Where did the pressure come from? And then the other question is going to be, what do you think of the new movie Disclosure Day?
Oh, it's Disclosure Day. Is that Spielberg's?
That's Spielberg's, coming out in June.
I'm biased. I was asked about it recently, and someone was like, is that going to make a big dent? And like the documentary Age of Disclosure that came out last year didn't seem to really sway Congress. But I was like, I don't know. Like, this Congress is so dumb that Spielberg might have a better chance than like a well-researched documentary. So
I guess Spielberg's, when he first named the movie, it was something else. And it wasn't till after the Age of Disclosure came out, and it was a perfect segue, if you think about it, to Disclosure Day. It was genius. But I think you're right. I think, there will be a lot of society, if nothing else, even all this work we're doing with Congress and everything else. The one thing that is happening is there does seem to be an awakening in society, and the stigma, for a large part, is starting to disappear.
Well, and that kind of brings us back to you got a two-part question there. I answered B first, and now I'll answer A. So with Trump, I mean, folks out there on the left like despise him or whatever, but like, don't forget, he's a master communicator. And so I think when him and his administration look at the UAP UFO issue, I mean, some people, especially on the left, will say, oh, Trump's trying to, distract from the Epstein files, which people also say about the Iran war. Oh, that's him wagging the dog and distracting from the Epstein files. I'm like, there can only be so many distractions from the Epstein files. Well, maybe not. There's millions of documents and a lot of bipartisan sin to go around with those Epstein files. But I think it's kind of more so when Trump looks at something like UFO Reddit, and there's 4.1 million people. And like when I first got into this issue back in 2023 and started covering it, I think there was like 3.3 million people who were a part of that Reddit group. And so now it's at 4.1 million. And so like they keep growing, and that's a large amount of voters, etc. And a lot of those people tend to not be your normal Republicans, Democrats. Like a lot of them are kind of indifferent about the everyday transportation policy, military policy, etc. And so they're just focused on this. And so we'll see. I mean, because now we're hearing like all we kind of know about what Trump thinks disclosure is going to be is that we're going to get a shiny UFO coin. And like members of Congress love these coins. This is a Marine one. This is
you got to get one for me if it comes out.
Don't tell CNN I stole that one. But like lawmakers love, and then this one I took because all the Republicans were wearing their AR-15 buttons, and I collect. I'm a history buff, so I collect buttons and all that. Well, no. So now I'm like, how am I going to get my hands on one of these Trump UFO coins, even though I can't pay for it, because that would be unethical of me as a journalism prof and journalist, you know? But so that's where I haven't really heard from members of Congress that they know what's coming with disclosure. And so that's where the last time I talked to Congressman Burleson, who's very active on this issue, and this was a couple of weeks ago, because Congress has been gone last week and then they're gone this week for their Easter recess. They take a 2-week Easter recess and give the rest of us not even a day off for it. Take that up with your members of Congress. But so Burleson, last time I talked to him, he was like, yeah, I don't know if the White House is trolling us or not. And so even members of the UAP caucus on the Hill have been a little wary to just, you know, not quite drinking the Kool-Aid. But so then when she was just on the Bill Maher show, and I haven't been able to ask her about this, but it really piqued my attention because her and Burleson have had these classified briefings from the UFO unit within the FBI, which when they first started their investigation a couple of years ago, they had no idea this FBI unit existed. They didn't find out about that till the start of this Congress. So last year. Well, so when Luna was talking with Bill Maher, she said, well, the FBI is going to release all they have. And it just piqued my interest because I was like, wait, do you have that confirmed? Do you have that from that FBI UFO unit? Or do you have a relationship with Kash Patel I don't know about? Because Burleson is well sourced with the FBI, but he tells me he doesn't have Kash Patel's number, so he doesn't have that direct access. Or Luna, she's had more direct access with the nation's Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. And so I've never asked her if she's got a personal relationship with Kash Patel. And so that's where I'm like hearing these little things, and I'm like doing what I do, collecting the information, but staying back from it. A lot of people in the community are really getting their hopes up. And I'm kind of like, hey guys, if the future is like the past, you are going to be very let down.
I try to stay even keel, you know, because if you get too high or too low,
yeah,
you're just on a roller coaster ride. I did want to follow up real quick. One more thing before I forget it. And you mentioned David Grusch, Burleson bringing him in. How has Grusch been received, you know, in you know, as far as working with Burleson in Congress on Capitol Hill? How has he been received?
They seem to love him. He technically can't work for the UAP caucus or for the Secrets Task Force because he works for one member. And it's an old school rule that I really understand. That's where like you would have a really powerful committee chair back in the day. And if that committee chair wanted to take your staffer and use them, like that rule kind of blunted them. So because Congressman Burleson hired David Grusch as his personal staffer, Grusch isn't allowed to like work for the committee, etc. But everything with the Secrets Task Force has been a little hush hush, nudge nudge, because they're only supposed to get a 6-month window for task force, and then the task force can get another 6-month window, and then it's supposed to be done. Well, they've now been going about 18 months or whatever, and leadership's fine with it. And so lawmakers kind of make up their own rules as they go. But it seems like, and actually when it comes, because many of you have heard Congresswoman Luna and others, they sent this letter saying, hey, we would like these 46 some odd different UFO videos to be released. And I'm like, wait, that's curious, because when lawmakers go into one of these classified settings, which are called the SCIF, when they go into them, lawmakers have to leave their phones in a cubby hole. They have to leave their iPad, Google glasses, whatever they got electronically, even like a Google Watch or an Apple Watch would have to stay outside of that secured, compartmented information center. So they go in there, they're allowed to take notes while inside there, but when they leave, they have to give those notes to, I believe, a member of the military. So they're not allowed to even like take their notes with them. So that's where I'm like, wait, where'd you get this list of 40 plus different seemingly classified videos of different UAP, UFO? And I'm like, oh, that might be one where Grusch came in, because he might more readily know what the government calls many of those different videos. And so, yeah, Burleson has definitely been able to, Burleson's gotten his money worth, and I guess our taxpayers.
Good. I was afraid that they would, because they're not for it, they would look at Grusch with kind of disdain, because he's representing something that they don't even want to deal with. This leads to another important
question. He's been really quiet, though. Like, I haven't even seen. I mean, there's 535 members, and each one of those members has 15 to 30 staffers on the Hill. So there's just thousands and thousands of people on the congressional or Capitol grounds at all times. I've never even bumped into Grusch, which I hate, because I really want to chat with that man. But yeah, I haven't even seen him.
I'm guessing he's not really doing interviews, though, is he? Because I haven't really seen him doing anything.
He wouldn't, but that's where, like, a lot of my congressional staffer sources, they'll never end up on Ask A Pol, but they're informing my questions on Ask A Pol.
Okay. Well, let me ask this question. It's where I was going to lead into. I think it's one of the frustrations of when we elect somebody, the Congress, whether the House or the Senate, we are electing that person to represent us. But the way the system is made up, I wanted to ask you about it because you led to this the last time you were talking about it. And that is, who's really making the decisions? Is it the ones we're elected? Is it their staffers or insiders? Because the way you had explained it in one of the previous podcasts, that there's stuff that that doesn't even make it up to the representative or the senator, that their staffers are the ones that kind of, they decide what he gets to see because there's so much stuff coming at him.
That's where, right before I came on, I dropped this new exclusive with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York. And it was kind of a throwaway piece. It's an interview I did with her earlier in March, but it's kind of blown up the internet right now. And it's interesting because I didn't really know how to like put it out there, because initially I have a video of it, but it's in a spot where you're not supposed to do videos at the Capitol, so I don't want to risk it. And then her staffer interjects a couple times and like speaks over her. And then I finally realized earlier today, I'm like, oh, that's the story. And so like the headline is, it's redundant, Gillibrand aide on Trump's promise to release the UFO files. He says NDAA already did it. And so it's, people are like, wait. Later on in that, the senator, she says that Trump promising disclosure is great. So like, why are you highlighting this aide? Well, this aide is her chief of staff, which I didn't put in the piece. And chief of staffs on Capitol Hill sometimes are the ones making the decisions for the lawmaker, because the lawmaker's out there doing the fundraising. And in this case, Senator Gillibrand, this midterm election cycle, she's the chair of the DSCC, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. So she's the one in charge of like running Senate Democrats elections, this election cycle. That means a lot of dialing for dollars. That means a lot of going to fundraisers for individual candidates, going up and trying to woo certain people to run. So she's got a lot of jobs. That only empowers her chief of staff and others more. And so that's where it has been hard with a lot of these issues to tell, like, okay, has Speaker Johnson been the one not allowing members of the UAP caucus to get access to these classified SAPs or special access programs, which are the ones David Grusch blew the whistle on. Well, UAP caucus members haven't been able to even like find out who in Republican leadership has been not allowing them. And when I asked Speaker Johnson and when I asked Oversight Chair Comer, both of them were like, was it me? Don't even know about that. Well, they might have a very senior staffer who has taken on this issue as his or her portfolio. And if that staffer knows that their boss doesn't really care about the issue, and if that boss, Speaker Johnson or whatever, says, okay, you got that one, then that staffer might be the one making these key decisions, including killing the UAPDA, the UAP Disclosure Act, now 3-4 years running in the NDAA authorization. And so, yeah, staffers, Hill aides do play an outsized role in American government. But you asked more broadly about outside influences. I mean, the military industrial complex kind of owns both parties.
Yeah,
they own both parties. And that's where what I'm looking for with Trump's promise to disclose these UFO files is, okay, what does that mean? Are you like, does the Trump administration, does the White House even know that this UFO unit exists in the FBI? Or is Trump just going to sign an executive order saying the Pentagon needs to release all they have? Well, if the order's at the Pentagon, military contractors, they're not the Pentagon. They're outside of that. And so like this year, I pushed different members at Ask A Pol UAP, which is on Substack. Check it out. Vice Chair of the Senate Intel Committee, Mark Warner. I'm like, hey, whatever happened to your bill to like declassify stuff? And he was like, oh, let me check on that. You know, and they just moved on from their own bills. And so that's where I'm curious, because some of the theories are, okay, this stuff's either hidden in the military industrial complex. If it's with those military lobbyists are exempt from FOIA. Like, yeah. I think the White House would actually know if it was hidden with them. But then there's also chatter that these secrets could be within the Department of Energy. So again, if Trump just says, hey, disclose everything you know to the Pentagon, he might be wanting full disclosure, but he might not even be directing that order to the right branches or agencies, let alone those little sub-agencies within those agencies.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really, I've been very skeptical because I'm not sure how the declassification process is going to go and how laborious it's going to be. And you mentioned they already gave up on one program where they were supposed to work on declassification. So, but you brought up a new element to it, and that is the people, the contractors, the military contractors that are outside of FOIA. I mean, how in the world are we going to get those docs? We're not. And so
yeah,
it just matter who has the goods. And if it's not in FOIA, we'll never see it.
And a presidential decree or executive order, I don't think that really, I mean, yes, Trump could do an executive order geared towards those lobbyists, saying something like any military contractor, or no, to get a U.S. government military contract in the future, you have to disclose anything on UAP UFO. I haven't heard that from anyone, but I mean, that would be a way for the president to dislodge that. Or you could just have Congress extend FOIA to military contractors.
That would be awesome.
Say, if you're going to do business with the United States government and with our taxpayer dollars, hey, you can be subpoenaed, all this. And if they do that, I would beg Congress to grow a pair and include yourselves in FOIA. FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. And you can FOIA any different. You can FOIA the CIA. You can FOIA the Pentagon. And usually you get back a lot of redacted pages, at least in my history. But what you never get back, or actually you can ask the agencies for any contact they've had with Congress, but Congress itself exempts itself from FOIA, which shame on Congress.
Right.
You demand transparency from the rest of the federal government, but you guys aren't worthy of that same transparency. Shame on you.
We better keep rolling. I wanted to ask you about the language. They're talking about Congress working with the White House. What is that in reference to? Is that the UAPDA? UAP
Yeah, so that's what
Congressman.
That's what Congressman Burleson was telling me, that he's reaching out to the full post is that Ask A Pol UAPs on Substack. I think we put that out last week. Yeah, it was last week. But Burleson was telling me that, again, because him and the UAP caucus didn't quite know what the president meant with him saying he's going to release these files, Burleson was like, okay, I'm reaching out to the White House. I'm asking them, hey, what do we do with this bipartisan UAP Disclosure Act, which has been pushed? The lead sponsors in the Senate are Senator Chuck Schumer and then Senator Mike Rounds, a Republican. And so Burleson's been the one really pushing that in the House, and they seem to really like and get behind that measure. But now Burleson's like, wait, as NDAA talks for this year, because it's the National Defense Authorization Act, the military has to be authorized every year. And so that act is a must-pass act every year. Mm-hmm. So Burleson's like, hey, let me talk to the White House, because this might be redundant, or this might actually be able to work in tandem with whatever they have planned. And so we'll see. It's still very early in that process, but it's interesting to hear that he's thinking a few steps ahead.
I wanted to ask one more question about the UAPDA. I was listening to Christina Gomez, and she made the comment, I know you probably won't agree with it. She made a comment that Mike Turner was the one who, in those 2 consecutive years, that he was the one behind it being dismantled. And now there's a new person in there, and this person seems to be wanting to work with Comer and everybody else. But you were in the process of trying to figure out who actually was behind it, which is crazy. Yeah. So it's crazy that someone can wield that much power and you can't bring it to light. I mean, that's the crazy part. That's DC, isn't it, for you?
Well, and that's the thing. So like, you have all this like folklore within the UFO community, and I apologize, but what Christina or whatever said there, that's just folklore. Because in the last NDAA, guess who was the chair of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence? It was not Mike Turner for the first time, and it was Congressman Crawford from Arkansas. And what did we see? We saw the same thing. And so that's where like a lot of lawmakers, even a lot of principals who were at the table on these talks, they were hoping the last NDAA would really kind of smoke out who the opposition was. Senator Rounds, the other main sponsor of it in the Senate, besides Schumer, he says the problem's with the House. The House has not totally confirmed that, but at the end of the NDAA last year, as it was like a week before it was going to pass, Burleson was given a green light by Republican leaders saying, hey, if you can go and convince these individual members, the ones at the top, the chair and the ranking member, then if you get them to sign off, then boom, it's good. Well, Burleson went and talked to all of them. As he tells us at Ask A Pol, he's like, I think it was good at the end of last year because I was able, he's like, this year when we have those talks, I'm not going to have to paint the whole picture. He's like, at least they're going to be conversant on it. And now with the White House kind of weighing in, he's like, that might really empower us. But Burleson may know who is currently in office and currently on the Intel committee. Like Mike Turner, he's pretty powerless. He was shivved in the back. Or maybe even he was shivved in the front by the Trump administration. ingloriously pushed out as chair of the Intel committee in the House. And so, sure, he's still got some power behind the scenes, but his team is no longer there. And like, tell me if I'm wrong, but his team is now out at House Intel. So I don't know what clout he would have. It seems to me like it's either coming from Speaker Johnson's office, or there could even be staffers who are kind of,
that's what I was going to ask,
permanent House Select Committee staffers. Yeah.
That's where I was going to go with it, is maybe it's the staffers, and that's why it's so hard to find them. Let's go to our little teaser question now.
Don't forget donors. Don't forget donors
too. Yeah, donors. I'm wondering sometimes if they aren't the ones really running the country, because they have so much influence. If I could do a political system, I would say you give each candidate a certain amount of money. It comes from our taxes. There are no lobbyists, and it would change our country overnight. But let's get to that question that I brought up earlier about Tim Burchett and how he had made the statement somewhere in the past that if you guys knew what I knew, if you saw what I saw, you would lose sleep. And so, I mean, TMZ, the guys that asked him, I mean, you could tell they were like, a little tense when they asked the question. Well, are we supposed to be afraid literally of the aliens? Is that what the danger is? That's where the threat's coming. I mean, that's, paraphrasing what they said. And he was clear. He said that he didn't think that there was any danger from them. His idea was, if there was any danger, I mean, we wouldn't be here. That with their technology, that we couldn't compete. And so he said he couldn't see that. And so my question for you, Matt, is when you talk to the different representatives and senators, what is the tone you get? Is it an alarm tone? Is it like we've got to get ready for this? Is it like a threat narrative, or is it the other way? Well, it's not really a threat, but people deserve to know. And so, or is it a mixed bag?
Totally mixed bag. But I mean, with Burchett, I mean, this past week has been pretty fascinating in this space, because after what Matt Gaetz was interviewed, and former Congressman Matt Gaetz was interviewed, and he talked about this hybrid program where there's like breeding of extraterrestrial life with human life, blah, blah, blah. So then Burchett was asked about that, and Burchett said no comment. And people were like, what? And actually, the person who asked that did shoddy journalism, and like then tweeted out on X, this congressman confirms what we heard here. No. You can have 5 different nut jobs in a nut house saying the same thing. That is not confirmation. Right. That's just 5 nuts saying the same thing.
Right. Well, as far as that's journalism goes on, that's been going on for an awful long time. And it's, I mean, there's reasons that people believe it. One is because supposedly there are examples, if you read enough books, of some of them don't seem to be able to stay long here. We don't seem to be able to stay long in their crafts. And so I realize that that's probably one that Congress isn't ready to tackle yet, though.
Well, no, but it came up, and from what Burchett replied, it made it seem like there was a there. And I'm like, no. That's a congressman being overly safe, saying,
right, exactly.
I was in it. I learned, or we discussed these things in a classified setting. Can't talk about them, because when members do go into those SCIFs, classified settings, they sign away their life, saying, if I discuss this stuff here, out there, then boom, you can put me in jail or whatever. And that's where it's been fascinating this past week, seeing these lawmakers get a little bit more loose-lipped. Even Luna, with that long list, naming those programs by name, if she learned those names inside of a classified setting, well, then she could go to jail for saying those out here on the other side. And that's actually like been one of the bigger criticisms of these classified settings, because Burchett's told me in the past, he's like, so I read the New York Times in the morning, and there's a story, there's everything. He goes, I go into a classified setting. They tell me nothing new, just everything that I read in the paper this morning. But because now it was in a classified setting, I can't even discuss what I read in the New York Times. And
That's just where you shut people up and silence them, isn't it?
And that's a big problem. But so with Burchett in this instance, I was just been cracking up because I'm like, okay, I personally have sat outside of every skiff briefing you guys have had. I believe that's true since 2023. Any skiff briefing they've had, I've been there. And when they're coming out of those skiffs, it's just been like, okay, do we have a congressional therapist here? Because it seems like Burchett's about to jump off the Capitol. He's just like, oh, we're never going to get anything unless we get, what is it? Blank disclosure, unless we get
catastrophic disclosure.
Yeah. And so I've never, and like, what, someone like AOC, she comes out of those briefings. She has a rule, leaving a classified briefing, she just doesn't talk to the press at all. So like her, I wait 2 weeks and then circle back on what I was going to ask her when she was leaving the skiff, and she forgets it was classified info, and then I get her to talk. But so like,
you guys are buddies again?
Well, not, but like Burchett and them.
I'm being sarcastic. I'm sorry. Last time I had you on, there was a little bit of a riff there. So,
they all
that comes and goes. I get
coaster. But like all these lawmakers, at least in the UAP caucus, like none of them seem like good poker players. And so when they come out of there, you can tell on their sleeve whether they feel like they were railroaded or lied to or just like had smoke blown up their whatevers. And so I've never seen any of those lawmakers come out of a skiff being like, whoa, we learned some amazing things, can't talk about it. Like for Luna and Burleson, when they came back from the classified briefing with the FBI, their eyes were big. And they were like, whoa. And actually, Burleson and Luna told me and Joe Cahill from he's great, Joe Khalil. What is he? He's not Newsmax. He's News Nation. And so him and I kind of tag teamed Burleson and Luna for that FBI briefing, and we got them to like disclose a little classified info because we're both good at our jobs. And so that Friday night was the first time in my 20 years covering Congress that this ever happened. But I had a member of Congress call me on Friday night and say, hey, just so you know, the FBI is not happy with you reporting what we learned in that briefing. And I'm like, I don't care. I did my job. You flopped at yours.
Can I tell you what the frustration is for many of us, though? Is, you have the stuff where Tim Burchett just got on TMZ. And the other thing he said was that he knew that alien crafts were real and alien beings, NHI, whatever you want to call them. He said he knew they were real. And so you got Burchett saying that. And then you got Jim Himes saying, well, I've seen it all and there's nothing there. Anything I've seen, there's been nothing there. Do you understand that is a contradiction? And we're going, but all again, we want is the truth.
Yeah. But then again, remember what I said about Himes. Himes, he's going to take that report from AARO and he's going to take that testimony. When Jim Himes asked that question in a public hearing to the 3 or 4 people in front of him, their response satisfied his curiosity. And forever, he can point back to those 3 or 4 people and say, look, they said there's no there. Well, the other people in the UAP caucus, they're not satisfied with a response from those 4 people in the top brass or whatever. And so that's where they're just getting different sources of information and just trusting different sources as kind of the end all. And so again, that's where most all of Congress hasn't asked these questions, has been fine with non-answers.
Mhm.
And so that makes me kind of roll my eyes at them like, oh, you never took this seriously from the beginning. There's no there's no curiosity within you. Cool. Have you ever asked this question? Have you ever, like, for Himes, hey, I know
Was
you trust
AARO the only place
AARO,
you went to? I mean, was that
but
the
like I
only
know
place?
you, yeah, but I know you've read these reports. Have you ever thought about asking the Department of Energy? Have you ever looked into military contractors? And as far as I can tell with Himes, no. But again, he doesn't need to because he's satisfied with
Right.
those responses he's gotten on the record.
Well, they probably fit with what he already believes. Okay, we just got a few minutes left. Let's talk about AARO. I saw in one of the reports that you were talking to somebody about maybe there was a replacement for AARO coming. Remember which congressman that was?
Well, yeah, that's Luna and Burleson. Since
Burleson,
coming out of that FBI classified briefing, they've been like, "Oh, we can replace AARO." My big question, and I guess my big redirect for them is like, okay, has the FBI changed its mandate? Because AARO, even though you guys don't like it, AARO was created mostly by U.S. senators. Gillibrand, Rubio was a part of it, etc. And basically talking to them, the Senate created AARO to outsource their thinking on this topic. They wanted an outside agency. It feels like they were frustrated. They were getting so many questions, blah, blah, blah. And they were just like, okay, we take all these people seriously, not seriously enough to like start a committee focused on this, but serious enough to create an agency to like placate them. Well, and like one of my last interviews with Rubio before he became Secretary of State, was so frustrated with former Arrowhead Kirkpatrick because he's like basically looking at me like, Laslo, that's a great question. That's why I created AARO, so that they would answer that question and I wouldn't have to. Mm-hmm. And so like they saw Kirkpatrick as just failing at his like most basic duties. And so my big question to these UAP caucus members and Secret Task Force Chair Luna is, okay, you guys don't like AARO and you find this UFO group within the FBI to be a lot more up, and like the UFO group in the FBI had videos that the Pentagon had never seen and that members had never seen. And so they were like very bright-eyed and they were like, whoa, this group takes it seriously. They know what they're doing. But I'm like, okay, AARO, its mandate was to be public facing. It was there to answer our questions. Last I checked, that's kind of antithetical to the FBI's mandate.
Right.
FBI is there to protect government secrets. And so even though you had members of the UAP caucus really fall in love with this UAP group, I'm like, wait. Is the mandate going to change? Because since they found out about this UFO group within the FBI, sure, they've known a lot more stuff, but they've also been telling me I can't talk about a lot of stuff. And so I'm like, okay, are you now becoming a part of the deep state that you decry because you're on the inside, but us in the American public, we're still cut off?
And the whole purpose of it was created, like you said, to be faceward looking and give us the information and tell us what they find. But that has not been the case. And while they've done is,
failed. Yeah,
they failed miserably. So let me ask you a question. What do you think? How would we make AARO work? I mean, in a way that it can't be like the last, I guess the one now, I haven't heard much on it lately, so I don't know how Kozlowski or whatever. I don't know how he's doing. I know that Kirkpatrick is a name that a lot of people don't want to hear ever again.
Well, Kirkpatrick basically killed the agency theoretically for 99.9% of this community, which I always kind of push back on because the Senate crafted this and because the Senate cares about it. It's like, guys, that's their deformed child. They're not going to give up the baby because it's deformed. Like, I think you guys might have a better opportunity at being like, hey, let's have a surgery.
There you go.
And I think that surgery, that actually might look like, because I don't even think lawmakers, or I know lawmakers hadn't thought through a lot of this stuff when they created it, but like one of the biggest flaws with AARO is it's within the Pentagon. And so AARO is only going to ever know whatever the top brass allows it to know, and whatever the top brass allows it to investigate. And so that's just massive limitations built into AARO from day one. Lawmakers, at least in the Senate, they haven't even gotten that far in their thinking. They're still being like, hey, do you need more funding? Hey, and so, like, yeah.
So isn't the weakness of an outside organization trying to create outside, they wouldn't have access that AARO has? Isn't that part of the battle? Is like, you have to be within the system to get the information. If you get outside of the system, you may not be controlled the way that AARO was from those above, but you don't get the same access. Is that true?
So yes and no. You could have something like, what was it? The Church Committee with JFK, or the post 9/11, the 9/11 Commission, where those people on it are respected statesmen, stateswomen, and they have the full backing of Congress and the White House to go in to all these agencies and shake them up. Granted, I'm just now remembering that's how we got DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, because they went into all these different, like, 18 agencies and were like, wait, you guys aren't talking to each other? Oh,
it's 9/11.
So they had to have access to get that. And so, like, yeah, there is a way to overcome that, but there's got to be a will first. And and a will means there's got to be some thinking first. And I don't think folks are really thinking.
All right. Well, we're at the end of the hour, and I know you have a hard cut because you're coming right up. But Matt, I want to thank you so much. Really enjoy it every time you come on. You give us so much good information, and you've got a great brain, and you have access that nobody else has. I'm going to say that right now. There are a lot of good reporters out there. A lot of them that I respect. Like George Knapp, Chris Sharp, Ross Coulthard. I mean, there are all kinds of them. But as far as I know, you're the only one in DC covering this topic about UAPs. And so I want to thank you so much for everything you're doing for us and for all the hard work you're doing as well.
Anytime, brother. And hopefully y'all come and say hi to us at Ask A Pol UAPs on Substack, or we're on X and TikTok and Reels and all that.
Send that to me.
Appreciate your audience.
All right.
What's that, brother?
Send that to me, and I'll put that in the description of the video, and so people will know how to get there. Anyway,
yes,
I'm going to pull you up and close this down. Thanks, Matt. Well, I want to thank everyone for watching this podcast. I'm sorry it's a little shorter than normal, but it just turns out there were back-to-back podcast or meetings or whatever. And so, but I'll tell you what, there was a lot in there. And if you listen, there was a lot to take from that. Matt's always a good interview, and I very much appreciate him as a friend. Once again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, let me encourage you to do that. This channel's been here for a couple of years now. We've had incredible guests. And so go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and check out the channel and look at all the different guests we've had. Anyway, thank you for watching, and God bless.
Woke up in a parking lot, shoes on wrong, phone long gone, taste of metal on my tongue, sky still buzzing in my lungs, flashes in a stereo blue, voices shaped like colored glass, every question I could ask, answered then in double back.